and let's go right into it. And I'll go ahead and even turn on my camera. How do you like that? So what are the takeaways from the sessions that we saw today? What if you had to characterize like one or two things that you're walking away with today, what would they be? And you can do chat or voice. Again, I won't see it if it's going on the Slack channel unless someone wants to read it out loud. Human factors around research computing are complicated. I think that's absolutely correct. And it takes some getting used to. I think the discussion about researchers versus non-researchers as the starting point for cyber infrastructure facilitators is a very complicated one, because part of it is what's your background, but a lot of it is what's your attitude. I remember years and years ago, we were hiring for a position, and it was a technical position, technology position. And the very first candidate we interviewed was hostile and antagonistic during the interview, and had excellent qualifications, knew the technology backwards and forwards, would have easily been able to do the job. And I couldn't picture putting that person in a room with a researcher and expecting anything good to come out of it. And so we politely went through the entire interview period, and they were never even considered for that position. It wasn't even close. The role, and this is true at our institution because we're such a small team, everybody has a researcher facing component to their position, no matter what their job title is. And if I can't imagine putting you in a room with researchers, I can't hire you. And we'll never have enough people on the team that will have that luxury, that we can have someone who's purely back office. The flip side of it is, we once asked for volunteers from the enterprise Unix team to come over from where they were to our organization and flip their brains upside down. And someone did, and did a great job. We were very happy, even though they had zero research background. We were very, very happy with how they had worked out. We've been fortunate in that whatever the person's background, they've been able to be very successful. But I think a huge part of this is mindset and attitude. If you go in with the right mindset and attitude, yes, there's a lot to learn, and that'll be true no matter where you start from. But you can be successful. If you go in with all of the right background and the wrong attitude, you're not only going to fail, you're going to drag the organization down with you. That was my long screed. Anyone want to tell me I'm full of it? I enjoy arguing. I come from a long line of recreational arguers. Does that mean everybody here agrees with me? That would make me sad.
Of course we agree with you.
It doesn't count from you because you work for the same group. No ringers. Come on, somebody push back. There's no straightforward how-to guide for being a research professional, and everyone has their strengths and contributions. Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct, Kim. I think that's spot on. I think there are a lot more of those enterprise Unix admins that get tired of enterprise and getting further and further from the faculty and students with like, yeah, I think that's exactly correct. And, at my institution, we're in a period where we do not have the luxury of recruiting people from the enterprise side, but that's exactly what happened when we did do that. There was someone who had fallen out of love with the enterprise side, and were looking to fall in love with something new. And we couldn't give them a big raise, or I don't think we gave them any raise. But we could give them a much more interesting day-to-day list of work, and they thrived. But protected time for research often lacks in Africa. Are you talking about, Mohammed, are you talking about for faculty or for research computing professionals? For faculty. Yeah. So my understanding is, and it's not unique to any particular geographic area, but when an institution is primarily focused on teaching, it becomes much more challenging to protect research time. That's certainly true, for example, in the US at non-PhD granting institutions, where the rewards for research are substantially lower, and the demands for teaching are substantially higher. I've talked to faculty from institutions where they're doing 4 or 5 courses a semester. Typical in the US, I think, is for research intensive institutions is more like 2 to 3 per semester. So I think it varies hugely depending on the kind of institution as well. Let's see here, this thing we call investigation time, which allows percentage of employees' time. That's the umbrella for library and RDS is under. I feel like that's an awesome opportunity. So I'll be honest, for myself, the way that I've been able to carve time out for something that I'll label research, although it's been research about research computing workforce, but the way that I've been able to carve time out for that is to have grant money. And if I don't have grant money, I don't usually have an excuse to go do that stuff. We said in applications for system engineers, investigation time is a chance for them to get that fall in love opportunity. Yeah, I think those are all excellent points. I think it's been, for some institutions at some times, it can be challenging. Right now is a really hard time for everyone because, of course, budgets are slashed as a side effect of COVID. And so I think today, if you went to your administration and said, we need to carve this out, it'd be a much harder case to make than it would have been 2 years ago. And hopefully then it will be a year or 2 from now. Work can be a lot more fulfilling because the enterprise IT stuff, even in academia, is getting more and more like the commercial world. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's actually starting to spill over into the research computing world. So for example, if you're dealing with legally regulated computing and data, like you're doing HIPAA, or you're doing controlled unclassified information or whatever, the way you approach the task list starts to look more and more like the enterprise approach. That's not avoidable in the sense that there's more and more research funding coming from the federal government that has those kinds of restrictions on it. So we are in the planning stages for creating legally regulated enclaves for all of our systems. And that's not going to be trivial to do. It's probably going to take a year, maybe more, to really get those to be rock solid. But it's also a screaming need that our researchers have, and we can't just duck. We ducked for 20 years. We can't duck anymore. Not that that was a goal to duck that, but now suddenly the need is very, very loud. My experience is that researchers thank you profusely if you know how to make it work. They just want to do their research, not become Linux gurus. Once you show them how, they seem to take over and run with it. Yeah, that certainly aligns with what I've seen, Matt. They just need to get over a hump, and usually that hump requires information they simply don't have, and that it's not trivial to provide them because the set of all information that they might need is incredibly large, and knowing which information they're going to need in advance is incredibly difficult. On top of which, if you gave them all of that information in advance, they would forget 90% of it because they wouldn't be putting it to work immediately. This is one of the things we have, in a sense, a lot of hidden, not policies, but practices, because if we tried to teach them all of those practices up front, they wouldn't remember them. Or if anything, they would probably invert them and do the exact opposite of what we wanted them to do, because it's complicated stuff that's hard to understand until you're in the middle of it. So for example, we don't tell our users, you're not allowed to run number crunching jobs on the login nodes. But if they do it, we tell them to stop and explain why. The reason we don't tell them that is because there's about 50 other things that we need to tell them of equal importance, or perhaps even greater importance. And it's much more effective to wait until they break a rule and then tell them to stop than to give them the 50 rules up front and have them forget 45 of those rules. And that's worked pretty well. And what we found is when you ask someone either to do X or to not do Y, almost all of them are willing to comply. It's a really good case to make for Sandra Thompson is an engineering and knows cPanel like the back of her hand. We can't even hire half a person in 9 months, but if we can work out a trade, we get 1 day of her time a week, we'll have a campus cPanel service up within 9 months. We can save thousands of dollars by decommissioning the engineering instance, several other campus instances. It's also investigation time that had measurable, concrete, financial, and time-saving benefits for us. Yeah, I think there's probably a distinction between investigation time, where the outcome is likely to benefit the investigator primarily, versus investigation time where the outcome is likely to benefit the constituency primarily. I guess the point was, when it's the right person, the right connection, it's worth it. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think that's totally right. But it's a judgment call or prediction. Well, predictions are hard, especially about the future. You have to make a prediction about whether it's going to pay off. Now, these are the kinds of decisions we are having to make all the time anyway. So yes, I think we're all doing this kind of on a case-by-case basis. I think one of the skills that we don't teach very much, and really should, is how to craft an argument so that it is compelling for a particular audience. You know, we've all heard this term about you manage down and you manage up. You're not just managing your team, you're also managing your boss. And I think you have to think really carefully about what's the set of issues that the people above me in the chain of command are trying to resolve, and how can I present the thing we know is the right thing to do, but that is going to require a decision from them. How can I present that thing in a way that aligns with what they're concerned about so that it's more compelling for them? And I don't pretend to have a huge amount of expertise on that. I will say that sometimes my strategy is wait patiently, because they have to see things in action before they can really believe it. That there's such a thing as believing it sort of intellectually, and then there's internalizing it. And sometimes you have to give them an opportunity to internalize it before you start working it. That's certainly been my experience. And for me, it's very helpful if someone comes to me and can structure an argument in favor of a particular course of action based around the concerns that I have to address. Have others had that kind of experience? I thought about it as similar to cybersecurity discussions. At face value can look like impediments that simply cost more money. Yeah, I think the analogy is very valid. The problem is that the invisible is unseen, right? Fish don't know they swim in water. So if you're not having cybersecurity incidents all the time that have strong negative impact on the people you need to follow the cybersecurity rules, then it's completely unclear to them why they should bother to follow those rules. And it just looks like a speed bump. And it's really, really hard to capture why it's important until they've had the experience. You know, my observation has been people don't do backups until they have a hard drive crash. the proper pitch, increased opportunities due to more compliance, better cross-security efficiency, etc. One of the communication trainings we got in library and information studies was customized elevator pitches. Think about how you introduce your value in 30 seconds for people from different academic areas and people from administration. Spent a half-day workshop practicing that. It's really helpful. I think that's exactly right. And particularly when you squeeze it down to a very tiny amount of time, it forces the person learning how to make the pitch to really focus on what are the essentials, what must be conveyed and will be the most effective in clarifying the importance and value of what you're trying to convey. People also don't check up on automatic backups until they need to pull from the backup. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Good. More questions or comments? All right, then let's wrap up. Thank you to all of our speakers and panelists today and moderators. Terrific day. Got a tremendous amount out of it. I think we all did. Very excited. By the way, I'm excited to report that we have, I think by now, over 300 attendees for this workshop. And the virtual residency as a whole has now served well over 1,000 people. I haven't yet done an institution count. My guess is that the institution count is hovering around 400, but may not have crossed that line yet. But if we're at 1,000 research computing professionals that we've served, that means we've covered over half of the constituency that we want to serve, the research computing facilitators, the researcher-facing cyber infrastructure professionals. We've covered over half of them at this point, and I mean in the entire country, and I'm very, very proud of that. So thank you, everybody. We'll reconvene tomorrow. Tomorrow, of course, is our last day. It's Friday. We've got all kinds of exciting stuff coming up for you tomorrow. I'll give you the quick preview of coming attractions. We're starting off with a panel on teams of cyber infrastructure professionals. So recruitment and retention, management, team building, and motivation. Then we've got a panel on strategic thinking and visioning. Then we've got a panel on the cyber infrastructure funding landscape, which includes a mix of, on the one hand, active program officers from federal research funding agencies, and on the other hand, research computing professionals who have successfully gotten funding from agencies like that. And then we'll wrap it up at the end with our traditional stories from the trenches roundtable. So we're looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll hopefully get today's videos posted on the YouTube page by tonight. And by the way, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, just anywhere on the webpage where you see a link that says video or videos, just click on it. It'll take you to the place where there's the link to the YouTube thing, and you can go to the YouTube thing and look at some of the videos. They are even closed captioned for your convenience. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.